When the British settlers arrived in Australia, they viewed the natives as little more than animals, and stated that their ancestral land belonged to no one. As time went by, attitudes towards the Aboriginal Australians didn't improve much, and many of the wrongs done during the early years of settlement were not righted. In 1972, Aborigines from around the country gathered in Sydney to discuss the steps to be taken for the rectification of the situation, and the conclusion was to send 4 men, Michael Anderson, Billy Craigie, Tony Corey and Bertie Williams, to protest at Old Parliament House in Canberra. The protest was only expected to last a few hours before they were turfed off, but in fact, it's still in progress today. The Aboriginal Tent Embassy was formed to deal with the issue of native land rights. At the time, Aborigines could lease, but not own, the land that their families had used for millennia, with no rights to natural resources on that land. Time and time again, Prime Minister William McMahon had point-blank refused to listen to their pleas for rights. Things looked, to say the least, grim. The 4 original protesters planted a beach umbrella on the lawn of Old Parliament House on the 26th of January, 1972, Australia Day. Fairly soon, more joined them, adding tents and other temporary shelters. The unofficial embassy continued to grow until, in July the same year, the Australian government passed a law stating that squatting on parliamentary lawns was illegal. A group of police forcibly removed the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, with 8 arrests, including the author Roberta, or Bobby, Sykes. Born on the 16th of August, 1943, Bobby Sykes was a prominent protester for Aboriginal rights, despite not being an Aborigine herself. Her mother was white, and her father, who she never knew, was an African American. After being expelled from school aged only 14, she tried her hand at various jobs, including nursing, before finally settling on political activism and writing. Her influence was not limited to the Tent Embassy, which she helped establish as an executive secretary. As well, she, along with Sue Chile, Marcia Langton and Naomi Myers, set up the BWA, or Black Women's Action, in the 70s. This group, which changed its name first to Black Women's Action and Education Foundation, and then to Roberta Sykes Indigenous Education Foundation, was formed to assist Aboriginal students. As part of this, they raised the money Bobby needed to enroll in America's Harvard University, where she received a degree, becoming the first Black Australian ever to do so. Furthermore, she taught the students of the Aboriginal and Island Dance Theatre the skills behind creating a newspaper, resulting in the Aboriginal and Islander Message. Bobby Sykes died on the 14th of November 2010 at the age of just 66. The Aboriginal Tent Embassy returned about a year after Bobby and 7 others were arrested there. Their first breakthrough came in 1976, when Malcolm Fraser, who had taken over as Prime Minister, put a bill first suggested by former Prime Minister Gough Whitlam when he was leader of the opposition into action. It stated that if an Aboriginal group could prove that their ancestors had used a piece of land, and if it was not in use at the time, they could claim ownership of it. At this point, the embassy disbanded voluntarily, as, for the moment, they were satisfied. After a while, it was re-erected to deal with other land right problems, at which time it existed in several places around Canberra, before returning to Old Parliament House in 1992. Both the Aboriginal Tent Embassy and Roberta Sykes were on the receiving end of controversy in their time. Oddly enough, Some of this was levelled at them by Aborigines. The Ngunnawal tribe, from the land in and around Canberra, claimed that non-Ngunnawal protesters had no right to put forward their complaints in Canberra, as it was not their ancestral land to complain about. Bobby, with no historical association with the land at all, was criticised for connecting herself with Aborigines, notably for her use of the snake motif in the title of her 3-part autobiography, Snake Dreaming, which was made up of snake cradle, snake dancing, and snake circle. On top of this, the tent embassy was repeatedly firebombed, and in 2005, the government began considering removing it again. The most recent large protest at the Aboriginal Tent Embassy took place on the 26th of January 2012, the 40th anniversary of the planting of the beach umbrella. Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister at the time, as well as Tony Abbott, the current Prime Minister and then opposition leader, were visiting the unofficial embassy when they had to be evacuated, during which Julia Gillard lost one of her shoes. According to the Australian Heritage Database, the Aboriginal Embassy site is unique because it is the only Aboriginal site in Australia that is recognised nationally as a site representing political struggle for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. As well as this, it is a significant tourist attraction, with a number of people travelling to Canberra going to look at its sacred flame. The Aboriginal Tent Embassy and Bobby Sykes have both changed Aboriginal Australians' lives significantly. Not only are they role models, inspiring confidence in other downtrodden individuals, but they put the Aborigines' plight in the public eye, as well as giving them a degree of control over their ancestral land. While a few restrictions are still in place, Aboriginal tribes can now own the land they've used for centuries and use the natural resources there. Without dedicated world changers like Michael Anderson, Billy Craigie, Tony Curry, Bertie Williams, Sue Chili, Marcia Langton, Naomi Myers, Bobby Sykes and others, the wrongs committed during the first few years of settlement would still stand in Australia.